Give me that before you hurt yourself.
I have planted a bomb at Tatalia High.
And there's nothing we can do.
There's nothing we can do. Why the school wasn't being evacuated?
Bomb. School. 40 minutes. I go on the line.
Bottom line is, the school is gonna blow up.
Oh, look, the school just blew up.
Well, apparently there was a bomb inside the building.
I've discovered that not only can you make your
with false information. You know what happened to him?
also make your fish
He got incinerated by a rocket.
You know clue what's going on.
Yo, stupid, wake up!
So you know what that means, you little shits?
And this entity will not.
Something's in my ass!
Here it is. There's the magic
Remember vow, and you have to
play Golden Eagle today to earn 10 extra spins.
If I find out you come before December 1st, I'll fuck your mom, your wife, your sister, and you.
Just kidding, Cyclops beat a geek.
19 mouse in baked beans.
Let's make it!
Oh shit, here we go again.
ready for my arrival, worm.
Me, yes.
Here comes the money.
Dollar, 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 dollar. Beat, beat, beat.
Good news is the lab boys say the symptoms of asbestos poisoning show a median latency of 44.6 years. You're laughing. Worst case scenario, you miss out on a few rounds of canasta. Plus, you forwarded the cause of science by 3 centuries. I punch those numbers into my calculator, it makes a happy face.
That's your last name?
I no longer feel bad.
Rebels, trap rebels, and sand traps.
Don't stick your fingers in it, damn it.
You remember your name? You're not fucking with me, right? Bubby?
No, 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 no!
I'm an old fuck that likes to do nothing except do Elliot Charlie JSD 343 reportings. Please.
What does that mean? People keep saying, what is nudge? What does that mean?
Why am I stuck in traffic? Don't they know? Don't they know who I am?
The doctor of poop, that's who I am. No, maybe you don't have any tumors. Well, don't worry. If you sat on a folding chair in the lobby and weren't wearing lead under...
You're not allowed to make jokes anymore.
According to Insight.
we will literally get shut down by Gordon Ramsay himself. He needs pizza.
But recording myself shooting. Goodbye. That doesn't make any sense. That was foolish. That garbage I've been making. It's not music. No.
Yes, we don't have to deal with Miss Person for 5 minutes straight.
Talk to me, young man.
Face, everyone was on the edge of their seats. They waited until the last bandage holding the cover over his face was almost removed.
Let's hope for the best,
said the doctor. He quickly pulls the cloth, letting the rest fall from Jeff's face. Jeff's mother screams at the sight of his face. Lou and Jeff's dad stare. Thank you. Lou and Jeff's dad stare awestruck at his face.
Why? What happened to my face?
Jeff said. He rushed out of bed and ran to the bathroom. He looked in the mirror and saw the cause of his stress. His face, it's horrible. His lips were burnt to a deep shade of red. His face was turned to a pure white color, and his hair was singed from brown to black. Shout out to his hair. Like the fire. He slowly put his hand to his face. He had a sort of leathery feel to it now. He looked back at his family, then back at the mirror.
Jeff, it's not that bad.
Not that bad.
It's perfect.
His family were equally surprised. Jeff started laughing uncontrollably. His parents noticed that his left eye and hand were twitching.
Jeff, are you okay?
Okay.
Hey, I've never felt more happy.
Bro. Alright.
You're not done yet.
I know. Look at me. This face goes perfectly with me.
He couldn't stop laughing. He stroked his face, feeling it, looking at it in the mirror. What caused this? Well, you may recall. Oh, yeah, shout out to when the narrator directly starts talking to the audience. What caused this? Well, you may recall that when Jeff was fighting Randy, something in his mind, his sanity, snapped. Now, he was left as a crazy killing machine. That is, his parents didn't know.
Doctor, is my son all right, in the head?
Oh, yeah. This behavior. Sorry. Was he high? Was he high?
Dude, shout out to Joe Swanson for making a guest appearance.
Was he high? I don't even know how I did that. How did I do that?
Oh, yeah.
It's all coming together, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's normal.
This behavior is typical for patients that have taken very large amounts of painkillers. If his behavior doesn't change in a few weeks, bring him back here and we'll give him a psychological test.
Oh, thank you, doctor. Do you want me to continue from there?
Jeff's mother went over to Jeff.
Credits roll. Sweetie, it's time to go.
Jeff looks away from the mirror. His face still formed into a crazy smile.
Okay, mommy.
His mother looked. I'm
so uncomfortable.
His mother took him by the shoulder. His mother took him by the shoulder and took him to get his clothes. This is what came in, said the lady at the desk. Jeff's mom looked down to see the black dress pants and white hoodie her son wore. Now they were clean of blood and now stitched together. Jeff's mother led him to his room and made him put on his clothes. Then they left, not knowing that this was their final day of life. Later that night, Jeff's mother woke to a sound coming from the bathroom. It sounded as if someone was crying. She slowly walked over to see what it was. When she looked into the bathroom, she saw a horrendous sight. Jeff had taken a knife and carved a smile into his cheeks.
Jeff, what are you doing?
Asked his mom. Why does she just sound like mildly irritated?
What are you doing?
Wait, I can try to make it sound more like concerned. Jeff, what are you doing?
Asked his mother. Jeff looked over his shoulder at his mother.
I couldn't keep smiling, Mommy. It hurt after a while. Now,
I can smile forever.
Jeff's mother noticed his eyes, ringed in black.
Jeff, your eyes.
Jeff's eyes were seemingly never closing.
I couldn't see my face. I got tired, and my eyes started to close. I burned out the eyelids, so I could forever see myself, my new face.
Jeff's mother slowly started to back away, seeing that her son was going insane.
What's wrong, Mommy? Aren't I beautiful?
Yes, son. Yes, you are. Let me go get Daddy so he can see your face.
She ran into the room and shook Jeff's dad from his sleep.
Honey, get the gun.
She saw Jeff in the doorway holding a knife.
Mommy, you lied.
That's the last thing they hear as Jeff rushes them with the knife, gutting both of them. His brother Lou woke up, startled by some noise. He didn't hear anything else, so he just shut his eyes and tried to go back to sleep. As he was on the border of slumber, he got the strangest feeling that someone was watching him. He looked up before Jeff's hand covered his mouth. He slowly raised the knife, ready to plunge it into Lou. Lou thrashed here and there, trying to escape Jeff's grip.
Just go to sleep.
No.
The two opposing sides going to sleep and saying no.
So that, my viewer, was the original Jeff the Killer. Now, comedy aside, after hearing that, you are probably wondering how this story somehow managed to achieve the iconography it has on the internet. I mean, this terrible story became so famous that it rivaled the likes of Slender Man, a character who has starred in several phenomenal works of horror over the years, and some less than stellar entries, despite being the main villain of a story that reads like a 10-year-old's fanfiction. And I do have quite a few theories as to how that came to be. My main theory being the fact that Jeff the Killer, regardless of the quality of his story, when you think about it, is the quintessential creepypasta character. He is the star of a nice and simple story about a serial killer with a scary face that sneaks into your house and kills you in your sleep. The entire point of creepypastas as stories are to serve as these spooky internet urban legends that could be spread around to scare people. And with a premise like that, it would be very easy to convince some people that a character like this exists and he's out there looking for more victims. Combine that with the spooky photo of him that is attached to every reading, and you have a character who had become far bigger than the terrible story he was attached to. Jeff as an idea was what people latched onto, not the story itself. And when you take that into consideration, it makes a lot more sense how this story and character managed to find themselves in the Internet Horror Hall of Fame right next to iconic characters like Slender Man, Smile Dog, and The Rake. Then, of course, there were also just the fangirls who found him hot, but let's not talk about them right now. Let's not talk about that. Regardless of your opinion of it, whether you love it ironically, unironically, or hate it downright, there is no denying the impact this story ended up having on the internet. As one of the first major creepypasta stories that would be made, Jeff the Killer would inspire many, many more original works that would follow it. Which is why, despite its iconic status, I am surprised by how little people are actually aware of the fact that this story is a work of plagiarism. Yeah, so we're only at the start of this journey, and I'm already throwing a curveball at y'all, because the story that I just read to all of you, the 2011 Jeff the Killer that propelled this character into the spotlight, was actually plagiarized from another story that shared its title from only a few years prior. So, let's take a look at the original story that truly started it all. Jeff the Killer from 2008. On the 14th of August, 2008, a thread simply titled, "Hi, I'm Killer Jeff," was posted to Newground. This was the first mention of Jeff the Killer that had ever happened on the internet, and in the days following, several posts would be made to 4chan with the intent of explaining who this character was. After the 4chan and Newgrounds threads, a video would be posted to a YouTube channel sharing the same name of Killer Jeff, where more of the character's lore would be explained. These posts were made by a user by the name of Cessier, who would be credited as the original creator of Jeff the Killer long before the 2011 story ever existed. Over the years, Cessier would try to take the rightful credit for his story back, claiming that every version of the character outside of his own was a fake, an endeavor that he would blame for the suspension of his YouTube account when it was taken down for supposedly violating YouTube's terms of service. Whether you believe those claims or not, there is no denying that the 2011 version of Jeff the Killer is a work of plagiarism, stolen directly from this original work. And that much is apparent both when looking at the timeline of events, as well as the similarities between both GameFuel TV's and Cessier's version of the story. Taking a look at the now archived version of the 2008 video, we get an idea of what elements were stolen from the original story, as well as what was changed. The video is only 2.5 minutes long, and the majority of it consists of random photos and text that tell us nothing. So it'll be really easy for me to just quickly run through the relevant information with all of you. The story of Jeff in the video goes as follows. Here's a story about Jeff Jeff and his brother Lou. You might be wondering how his face looks that way. It's a long story. I'll tell it to you soon. Jeff's brother, Lou. He was very popular and a ladies' man. He's a very nice guy once you have a beer with him. Jeff, in his mid-teen years. In this picture, he was teasing Lou by wearing his glasses. Jeff was indeed doing the world a favor and killing the humans that infest the world. He'll fucking cut you. This is the whole story so far. Jeff was hauling a gallon of acid into the bathroom to clean out his bathtub. He slipped on a bar of soap in which he fell, and the acid splashed all over his face, damaging his face. The neighbor heard his cries for help and took him to the hospital. Lou was at work, but came over to the hospital as soon as he heard what happened to Jeff. Never again was Jeff the same. So that was the original Jeff the Killer lore, and it's certainly something, alright? The video does not tell us much about the character, and some of the random facts it includes are, yeah, they're interesting. But right off the bat, we can very clearly see what elements were taken from the original story and what was changed in the 2011 version. Jeff still has a brother named Lou who seems to have a close relationship with him. He's still a murderer that sneaks into people's homes to kill them, and his appearance is still the result of a freak accident. This time around, though, Jeff and Lou are a pair of adults. There's nothing stating Jeff was ever bullied or murdered his family, and instead of bleach and fire, his appearance was caused by severe chemical burns. We also get some more information about this version of Jeff in the 4chan thread. It goes into further detail about the living situation of the brothers, as well as what happened to Jeff following the accident. It explains that Lou had a job as an accountant, taking care of both himself and Jeff while they both lived in the same house. Jeff would often try and help out by keeping the place clean, using large amounts of acid to clean out any mildew whenever he saw it. One night, while Jeff was cleaning out the bathtub, he slipped on a bar of soap and spilled the acid all over his face. The accident led to him being hospitalized, and soon after, he was offered a prosthetic for his face, leading to the appearance of Jeff shown in the photo. As far as I know, that was where the 4chan thread had ended. The only other lore we could be provided for the character came from Cessier's Newgrounds account, where he and other users often participated in Q&As as well as short role plays that involved the character. From these Q&As, we were able to learn the timeline of events that eventually led to Jeff's full transformation into Jeff the Killer. Here it is stated that Jeff's accident left him in the hospital's care for roughly 10 months, with him experiencing a complete mental breakdown the moment he got back home and took a look at his face. 1 month after said breakdown, Jeff began developing what was described as murderous schizophrenia on November 10th, and his murders happened only 1 day later. Following this, Jeff went on a murdering spree with the cops following close behind him. Somewhere down the line, Lou started killing people seemingly to protect his brother, and from then on it just starts devolving into a bunch of roleplay lore that isn't really relevant to the video. That was all the lore I was able to uncover about this version of the character, and honestly, I do not know how I even feel about it. Like, on one hand, yeah, it's not well made as a story at all. It's just as campy and poorly made as the 2011 story that copied it, so much so that I would say it's worse in some ways. However, I also really can't give it much flack because this wasn't really made to be a super iconic story on the internet that everyone would talk about. It's very clear this was just made by some kid at the time who wanted to share the lore of his roleplay OC, and it didn't go much further than that. So I don't really see the point in being overly critical of it. I just see the story as an incredibly interesting part of the character and story's history. I'm very happy that after all these years, the original creator was able to get credit for his creation and more people were able to recognize as much. Regardless of my own opinion of the quality of the story, I do think providing credit to creators is incredibly important, and this is a case where it was desperately needed. All of that being said, with what I've just described to you, you can probably imagine why Jeff the Killer over the years had become quite a bit of a laughingstock of a character. It feels like his iconography comes entirely from a place of the time in which his story was made as opposed to anything else. And that much slowly became apparent to the creepypasta fandom as Jeff went from being an extremely popular character unironically to being the punchline of practically every joke you could think of. It was because of this shift in the community's view of the character that the decision would eventually be made to remove the 2011 story off of the Creepypasta Wiki entirely. See, the Creepypasta Wiki had a great deal of quality control. If you wanted to upload a story on there, it first had to get by the mods, who would look it over, and if it didn't meet their standards, it wasn't accepted. The 2011 Jeff the Killer story bypassed these quality control measures purely because of the story's iconic status, which understandably made many authors upset. As a result of this, the story was eventually taken down, much to many fans' dismay. For a bit, it seemed as though there was a divide in the community. Some users were happy it was gone, and others felt that it was too iconic to simply be deleted from the wiki. The reason I bring all this up is because the moderators of the wiki at the time had a solution. A contest. A contest which challenged any creepypasta authors to try and step up and provide their own rewrite of the story to act as the official replacement to the 2011 version. This contest was held, and in 2015, the Banning K Jeff the Killer rewrite was made. Let's talk about that next, shall we?
Hello there, it is me, the one and only Jeff the Killer, here ambushing you in this dark, dreary forest.
Wait, this is supposed to be in a forest? Alright. And there, alright.
For one purpose, and one purpose only. To sell you. Shit. To sell you one-of-a-kind Clyde the Killer makeshift plushies. Now available at makeshift.com for a limited time. Get your hands on it while you still can, or else, ooh, we are gonna have problems. Let me tell you about this. I'm going to sneak into your house. I'm going to Jeff the Kill your mom. I'm going to Jeff the Kill your dad. I'm going to Jeff the Kill your... Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
I am dull.
On September 26, 2015, the contest to rewrite Jeff the Killer would end. Of the 15 submissions, one would win, and that would be the now well-known Banning K Kellum interpretation of the story. To this day, this version of Jeff the Killer is considered the official remake of the story, being the one that comes up when you look for the character on the Creepypasta Wiki. And I am just gonna be upfront and say it, I think this is a very good story, but not my favorite version of the character. To show you what I mean, I think we should first look into what this story does differently from the other two interpretations we've discussed already, as well as what it does the same. First things first, it should be known that the rules of the contest the story was written under stated that each entry had to follow a similar structure to that of the 2011 creepypasta. It was stated that Jeff needed to start the story relatively sane. He needed to experience some kind of life-changing, traumatizing event which involved bullies to some degree, and he needed to become the killer by the end of the story. The Banning K rewrite follows this formula to a T. In fact, this entire thing just reads like the 2011 story, but written in a much more grounded, realistic fashion. Jeff and Lou still move into a new neighborhood with their parents. They still get bullied by Randy, Troy, and Keith. The cops still get involved. Jeff still gets scarred in a final fight with the bullies. Everything is still there, but now it all makes sense and serves a proper narrative. For example, Jeff's feeling he gets throughout the story. In the 2011 one, it's just his urge to hurt people, which he gives into and uses to... In this version of the story, it's more like his deep inner rage, which he constantly represses because he doesn't want to give into it. Which works very wonderfully in this setting, because the tragedy of the story is that we have a character like Jeff, who knows he has the capacity to hurt others and fears that side of himself, forced into an environment where his patience is constantly tested by every aspect of his new life. Randy is now the son of a rich man who also happens to be employing Jeff's parents, so they and the police turn a blind eye to the bullying he receives as a result. Lou, instead of being sent to juvie, is sent to live with his aunt after he and Jeff begin acting out rebelliously, leaving Jeff completely alone in a setting where nobody has his back. This version of the story allows you to really, truly understand the struggles of this character. He isn't just some edgy badass who happens to snap, he is a truly troubled person trying to be better but struggling to do so because of everything around him. Which makes it really tragic when the accident happens, which leads to him becoming Jeff the Killer. See, in this version of the story, rather than having all the bullies show up with guns to some random party, Jeff is instead forced to spend time with Randy as an arrangement from his parents. They want Jeff to get along with their boss's son and as a result, leave him in their house so the two can bond. At first, it seems like the two actually get along. Jeff apologizes for fighting him earlier in the story, Randy seems chill, and all is well. At least until Randy has the bright idea to take Jeff to his garage and show him the flare gun his father owns. At this point, Troy and Keith show up and it is revealed that Randy plans on getting revenge on Jeff for beating them in the aforementioned fight. Here is where Jeff finally snaps, beating up Troy and Keith and going for Randy, who panics and ends up shooting Jeff in the face with his flare gun, leading to his disfigurement. After the accident, Jeff's parents arrive and find him knocked unconscious, his face severely damaged. He is taken to the hospital where he slips in and out of consciousness. During those brief moments, you can hear his mother talking to the doctors about his condition, saying that she can't have him looking like that because of what it would mean for their family's reputation. He also hears her lying, claiming that he shot himself with the flare gun, taking the blame off of Randy. This is what leads to the ending, where Jeff is taken home, kills his mother and father, and leaves Lou alive to find their bodies. The set of events I just described to you encompasses everything I love and everything I dislike about this interpretation of the character. Because on one hand, it fixes every major issue the 2011 story had. The final fight with the bullies is set up in a much more natural fashion. Jeff's disfigurement actually makes sense, and his reasoning for snapping and killing his parents makes way more sense than him just randomly deciding to do so after leaving the hospital. That being said, this set of events also exemplifies the major issue I have with the story overall. Because while this is a very well done story that makes Jeff and the characters around him significantly more compelling, I cannot say at any point that this story is at all scary. By painting Jeff in such a sympathetic light, by making his actions in the story damn near justified, it made it incredibly hard to find him scary because it felt like I was supposed to be rooting for him. That, and with how it ends, it's very clear that this version of Jeff is only out to kill his parents and maybe the bullies afterwards, which I feel really takes away from the scary urban legend aspect of the character, the idea that this guy is out there and will sneak into your house to kill you. My other big issue with the story, albeit this one being way more of a nitpick, is the fact that Jeff's design was kind of lost in translation here. Maybe this is just a me thing, but I feel like the design of Jeff the Killer, as shown in the photo, is so iconic that no matter the interpretation, it should be reflected in the story. The 2015 rewrite does not make any attempt to do this. Instead, after the accident with the flare gun, Jeff's design is described as something closer to that of Two-Face than the original character. The flare caused scarring on specifically one half of his face, creating a mark which looks similar to that of a half smile, and causing Jeff to become blind in one eye. This was it for his appearance. No carved smile, no pale complexion, nothing. And while I do understand why this decision was made, I feel it makes the story infinitely more grounded than its two campier counterparts, I also feel a large part of the character's identity was sacrificed to do so. All that being said though, I do still like this story. It is an overall well-made piece which shows us what the 2011 creepypasta could have been if it was written by someone more competent. The characters are compelling, the descriptions are vivid and paint a gruesome picture at times, and it was cool to see how it was well received enough that Banning K would continue to make it a whole series after. which I unfortunately still need to read. Is it my favorite interpretation of the character? No, admittedly. But it is still very much so a worthwhile read if you like Jeff the Killer just as much as I do. Now, with all of my opinions on this rewrite out there, I will admit that while reading it over again for this video, a part of me got really curious. If this story was the winner of a contest, what was its competition like? Because for all the things it did effectively, I did see my own personal issues with it. And that really got me thinking about whether or not I would have even voted for that story if I had read it when the contest was still going. So I did some digging, and eventually, wouldn't you know it, I managed to find the original page on the wiki where the rewrite contest was held. And alongside it, every single entry for the contest. Every Jeff the Killer rewrite that didn't quite make the cut. And I read them. I sat down and read the top 5 winning entries, Fanning K included, because I really wanted to give every one of these stories a fair chance in my own book instead of just dismissing them as the entries that lost. Now mind you, I didn't end up having much to say about all the top 5, and there were way more entries than those initial ones, so on this part of the video I only really only really intend on taking a look at the third and second place winners. That being said, if people are open to it in the future, I totally could go back and read every single entry that was made for the contest. Could be a really fun project to work on, who knows. Actually looking into these two other entries, starting with the third place winner, I was very pleasantly surprised by this story. The third place entry was written by author Jay Zoidberg, and oh boy, do I love the approach this person went with for it. The entire story is framed not from the third-person perspective we become accustomed to, but rather as a first-person testimony given by a police officer by the name of James Lamb. James was working the case of Jeff the Killer, trying to find out where he was hiding after he'd murdered the mother of a rich family named Tabitha Cromwell that lived in their local area. This investigation led him to Lou, who he found out was serving a sentence in
Nah, Orange Boy, I got the exact same DM. That's crazy, bro.
Lucas, Will, Mike.
Birdie, is it pink?
Dustin, Lucas, Will, Mike.
Max.
Is it pink?
Dustin, Lucas, Will.
Is it pink?
Dustin.
Welcome, Vixis6899.
That's my name. That's my
Unofficial
name.
Verity mod. You wanna open
in a juvenile delinquent center. Lou gave his own testimony explaining that Jeff as a young child always struggled with severe anger issues that nobody cared to keep in check. He said it was like all his other emotions were muted and empty, with his rage being the only real feeling he knew how to express. This made Jeff the target of bullying from good old Randy, Troy, and Keith, who would harass him enough that Lou began walking home with him every night for protection. This didn't stop them from showing up one night with a knife though, which led to an altercation in which Jeff ended up snapping, stealing the knife from Randy, and stabbing him to near death with it. Lou would end up taking the blame for the event to defend his brother, being sent to court in Jeff's place and being given an extremely severe sentence, as it turned out Tabitha Cromwell was Randy's mother, and she was not about to allow her child to take the blame for the altercation. Lou was sent away, and it was revealed that after Jeff was left alone, nobody left to defend him. Randy and his friends attempted to get revenge on him by sneaking into his home one night and lighting him ablaze with gasoline and matches. Jeff survived, completely lost it afterwards, and began his murderous rampage throughout the city, killing every single person who had, in his mind, wronged him or his brother in some way. The story eventually comes to an end as it's revealed that James planned out a sting operation to finally catch Jeff by manipulating Lou into trying to meet his brother in person, only to let him go upon sympathizing with him. He realized in that moment that Jeff was a scared, angry child who was never given the opportunity to grow, and despite knowing it was wrong, he couldn't bear to bring him in. This ending acts as a sort of confession, an old cop's admission of guilt for letting a killer go because he felt the world wasn't fair to him. And that is Jay Zoidberg's rewrite of Jeff the Killer. I really like this one. It isn't without its faults, but overall I think it's a very good reimagining of the character. Telling the story from the perspective of a cop's testimony instantly allows Jeff to play a much more antagonistic role in the story, especially at the start. For the first 2/3 of the story, Jeff is made out to be this terrifying urban legend in the local area. People say his go-to-sleep line like it's a quote from a movie. The media sensationalizes his rampage to a point where he's made into some kind of boogeyman, and any and all eyewitness accounts of the character always make him out to be some kind of ghastly monster. This story really paints the picture early on of Jeff being this scary character who slinks into your house at night and kills you while you sleep. And yeah, at the end it absolutely does make him out to be much more sympathetic, which was the main issue I had with the Banning K version of the story, but in this one I'm not nearly as bothered by it because it feels like an effort was made to make Jeff an antagonist here. Jeff not being the protagonist of the story does wonders for his character. It allows us to see his story from an outside perspective. We don't know everything right away, only learning bits and pieces as this cop goes over his extensive research trying to catch this notorious serial killer, and realizing over time that the story is not as one-sided as it was initially made out to be. There was also some very strong world building here, with us being given a very strong sense of this town and the way the law operates here. This was an element of the story that I also thought the Banning K story did fantastically, so I was really happy to see it properly followed through with this one as well. As for my issues with the story, I do have a couple. The first one, which is not a big deal, is that there were a few very noticeable spelling mistakes and grammatical errors that popped up from time to time in the story. They weren't frequent enough where it felt like the whole thing was thrown together haphazardly, but I did notice them from time to time during key moments in the story, and it absolutely did take me out of it. The other issue I do take with the story is that ending. I see what they were going for, the cop sympathizing with this killer because of everything he heard and letting him go, but I'm not the biggest fan of the outcome of that. Because at the end of the story, Jeff's murders come to a complete and total stop. He just disappears without a trace and seemingly stops his murders because of a change of heart. I don't know if this is just me misinterpreting the story or something, but I just do not think that's how the story would end at all. Jeff throughout this story is depicted as someone who is completely snapped and gone over the edge. There is a vivid description of how his victims were violently mutilated at the scenes of the crimes. This guy may have been sympathetic in the past, but his actions now are still very much like that of a deranged serial killer. To have the cop who's been following him this whole time let him go was already a bit of a stretch I was willing to accept. But to also say that it made Jeff just stop killing people entirely because of a supposed change of heart, I feel just goes against everything we've seen that character do prior. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it absolutely was something that bothered me, especially how invested I was in the story leading up to that moment. Overall, this rewrite is really solid though. It effectively set up Jeff as this spooky urban legend, had a very compelling structure it followed with a first-person account from a jaded cop, and it was able to ground the story much more in reality like the other solid rewrite I've already talked about. I could totally have seen this one winning as well if those two complaints I had were better executed. Moving on, we have the second place winner, which I do not feel the same way about. This story was written by author Sirius Nightshade, and I just want to say right off the bat that I really hate this one. I don't mean to be rude to the author or anything, but this particular interpretation of the story is basically everything I don't like about early creepypastas wrapped into a single writing piece. Actually getting into it, the Sirius Nightshade rewrite begins with a very familiar setup to most other Jeff the Killer origins. We follow Jeff as the main character, who lives with his mother all alone, and his social and home life here is far worse than any rewrite has ever depicted it. His parents are divorced, and his abusive father has custody over Lou, meaning the two characters never get to interact outside of phone calls. His mother is incredibly absent, and while he starts out with a good life at school, being relatively liked by his classmates, that takes a turn for the worse once he starts getting bullied by good old Randy and his crew. In this version of the story, Randy starts going after Jeff after he attempts to comfort his girlfriend upon finding out he was cheating on her. Viewing Jeff as competition, he began spreading rumors around the school that Jeff was a psychopath because he saw him stepping out of a mental health clinic at one point, and practically everyone turns on him. This causes Jeff to go down a violent mental spiral until eventually he snaps and uses a switchblade to carve his signature smile into his face, and he goes on a murdering spree. He breaks into Randy's home, kills him, and then moves on to his dad, who he murders in an attempt to save Lou. Lou refuses to go with him, now scared of what his brother has become, and the story ends with Jeff on the run as the now infamous serial killer, Jeff the Killer. From the basic synopsis, you'd probably wonder what it is I hate about this story compared to everything else I've talked about on here. It shares a pretty similar structure, has all the same beats and characters, and doesn't really deviate in any way you'd expect. The answer to that is two very glaring issues I have with it. The first and most apparent being Jeff's actual character arc. See, in every other version of the Jeff the Killer story, even the shitty 2011 one, it was established very early on that Jeff had the capacity to become a serial killer. In the two 2015 rewrites we just talked about, that much was apparent. That is not the case in this one. Yeah, Jeff is depressed in this story as a result of his home life, but that is pretty much it. He is a very normal, sympathetic guy. He never showcases any violent tendencies. He's never made out to be this potentially dangerous character. Hell, the reason he gets bullied in the first place is because he cares enough about one of his classmates to let
Everything that I've read, praise the Lord,
and becomes a killer in the first place. Halfway through the story, while sitting in his room thinking about all the terrible shit that's happened to him, he just randomly snaps with nothing even provoking it and begins carving a smile into his own face. There isn't even an inciting incident like in every other version of the story. No fire, no chemical burns, no flare gun to the face. Nothing happens in the story to give Jeff that last push into becoming Jeff the Killer. He just suddenly decides to start killing people. And with how normal this version of Jeff was leading to this moment, it just feels really contrived and extremely rushed. My other massive issue with this story is how much it relies on pure shock value near the end for the sake of scaring or disturbing the reader. I was not ready for some of the things that would be described in this story, and quite frankly, I am not comfortable getting into it because they are things I do not want to talk about on here. All I will say is that this rewrite goes a lot into topics of sexual abuse in very descriptive detail, and it does so very poorly. It adds nothing to the story, just thrown in there completely arbitrarily to try and shock the reader near the end, and I just found it to be extremely distasteful in its execution. This story overall just left a very sour taste in my mouth. It gave us a very poorly written version of Jeff who becomes a serial killer for practically no reason, and it relies so heavily on shock value near the end that it practically ruins the entire experience. I genuinely don't know how this one even got second place, especially with how much more I liked the story that came right before it, and how much better the first place story ended up being. After finishing this in the third place entry, I feel like it does put it a bit better into perspective why Banning K's entry was the one everyone accepted. It was a very well-written story that respected the source material and tried to tell as faithful an interpretation of the 2011 version as possible. While I do love the third place entry and feel it very easily could have been the winner as well, that one very much so felt like a more unique spin on the character that deviated far from the source material. That's what I loved it for, but in a rewrite contest filled with fans of that 2011 story, I feel like the clear winner is the one that follows that premise so closely and much more effectively. As for second place, I feel like it did not even stand a chance against the Banning K story. It also chose to follow a very similar structure to the 2011 one, but its rough, contrived execution and over-reliance on shock factor just made it pale in comparison. With all of these rewrites said and done, the contest over, and Banning K as the winner, Jeff the Killer as a story would not be picked up again for quite a long time within the creepypasta community. The 2015 story would be considered the absolute best version of Jeff the Killer for years, up until the creepypasta community had a small resurgence 4 years ago near the end of 2020, where horror YouTuber David Neer would post a new entry in his horror series, The Morgue Files, titled Jeff the Killer. Let's take a look at that next, shall we? It stays true to the origin of the character and his family in such a way where it always feels like the Jeff the Killer we know and love, while also changing small things to make the story scarier and set up many future entries. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Morgue Files, it's an audio horror series which goes into the history and stories of a bunch of different creepypasta characters, attempting to put them all in one massive, conjoined universe. It isn't read out like your typical horror story narration, with the story instead being conveyed purely through the voice acting and audio design heard throughout. This format right away felt like a breath of fresh air for me, as it really stood out amongst all the other stories I had read prior for this video. It also stood out in the way that this was the very first version of Jeff the Killer that I can confidently say I didn't have any major issues with. Now, because you've already heard Jeff's origins time and time again, and this story is pretty true to form for the most part, I'm only really going to get into what this version does differently compared to everything else. The first thing I noticed right away when getting into this story was the sheer amount of effort it put into giving us a well-realized, realistic interpretation of the events of the 2011 story. Jeff is immediately described as having albinism, a rare genetic condition in which the body has a lower amount of melanin than usual. Because of this, Jeff became the subject of bullying, leading to him dyeing his hair black to try and make it less noticeable for those around him. From the very beginning, I saw what this story was trying to set up, and I was all for it. And that much continued to be the case as I got further. Jeff's characterization is also incredibly good here. Instead of having this feeling that is described throughout,
everything that I read, praise the Lord.
Incredibly unstable individual. He flies off the handle at the smallest of remarks, leading to him becoming extremely hostile and at times violent. His family has no idea how to help him with it, with his father choosing to ignore it and his mother being incredibly overbearing at times towards him. All of this culminates into a version of the story where you can sympathize with Jeff, but he is still scary. He is clearly mentally ill in some way and isn't provided the help he needs for it, but his actions throughout the story often affect people who don't deserve it, and he makes no attempts to be a better person on his own. All of that, as well as the many new details about Jeff's personality that are included, which are meant to further foreshadow the path he takes. David Neer wanted this version of Jeff to feel like a realistic serial killer, and you can see as much with many of the scenes depicting his behavior early on. He kills and mutilates small animals, watches and stalks a girl from his school obsessively, and fantasizes about the ways he killed people just because they get on his nerves. He has all the makings of a real-world serial killer long before any bullies or accidents that tip him over the edge, and it makes him really unsettling here. Is it a bit on the nose and cliche for him to be written this way? Yeah, a bit, and sometimes it took me out a little. But I think overall it benefits the story and allows Jeff to feel a lot more grounded than he usually is in these rewrites. And speaking of the bullies, one thing I really like here is the way the bullying and transformation of Jeff is handled. Instead of being harassed by the likes of Randy, Troy, and Keith in this version, Jeff instead gains a level of notoriety in his new town amongst several different groups of characters who have it out for him, which eventually culminates in the transformation we all expect him to have. He beats up a bully in his school named Spencer, steals a knife from a gang of thugs after his old one was taken by the school's principal, and gets into constant fights with his family, which leads to them being afraid of him. What this all leads to is a horrifying set of events which eventually push him over the edge, allowing him to become the character we all know and love. It starts with him, shortly after being attacked by Spencer as revenge, going into a store to try and buy alcohol. He leaves the store, but has a run-in with the thugs he stole the knife from and is knocked out. When he next awakes, he finds himself on the ground surrounded by thugs, and he's beaten to a pulp by the man he stole from, the bottle of alcohol he purchased bashed over his head. The thugs try leaving